And we are back, and we're going to start our quarterfinal rounds for the top 8 debate. Vincent Dutrait art games. How do we want to say that? Games that Vincent Dutrait made art for, but we are debating the quality of the game.
I have it written down, top 8 Vincent Dutrait art in games. That's how I have it written
down. Art in games. Good idea. Okay, yeah. We can do that. I'm not going to lie. This first one, this hurts. This might be one of the hardest ones for me personally, because these are two of my favorite card games of all time.
Honestly, there's one game I like more than the other one.
Yep, I know which one it is, too. So, we're going to go with Jaipur versus Dead Man's Draw.
You know which one you're taking.
I can take either one.
I'll take Jaipur, honestly.
Okay, cool.
It's the one I'm more familiar with, the one I actually enjoy. Not that Dead Man Draw is a horrible game. It's one of the push your lucks that just doesn't catch my fancy.
Yeah, that's fair. So yeah, Dead Man's Draw is a push your luck, where Jaipur is a resource hand management card game.
Yeah.
We do want to specify Jaipur, the second edition.
Space Cowboys edition, yes.
Yes.
The one without the panda.
The one without the dead panda, right? That we discussed in our one of our previous episodes, yes. But Dead Man's Draw, though, doesn't have a lot of art from Vincent Dutrait. It's just he is attributed to some of it. I think he made like a cover or two, but a lot of the art from the game was taken from the app as well.
Yeah.
So that's worth us noting. Yeah. But do you want to start us off?
Sure. For me, Jaipur is the reason why it's number one on the list, and I think it should move on, because it is probably one of the best two-player games you'll ever find. So much so that every time you show this to people at the shop, it usually ends up getting bought.
Yeah.
Because that's how much people enjoy this game. And people enjoy the mess out of this game.
Right.
What happens is you're trying to collect sets of things. There's like silver, gold cards, rubies,
leather,
and stuff like that. So you're trying to collect them. And if I remember correctly, it's the first, when all the piles, or the first of the big piles are gone, the rubies and the...
Yeah, when 3 of the piles are depleted entirely, the game ends, or when the deck is out.
And so the way you do it is either you switch cards out of your deck, or if you have camels that allow you to take more cards out of the deck, and you're trying to get the select, but you got to be careful when you pull a card out of the deck, because the next card flip over might be something in like the rubies, the gold, and is it sapphire? Is the
silver?
Because the silver. So those 3 have less cards in them. That's why they're worth more points at the end of the game. But there's different ways to get points. You can nickel and dime this game and still win. You can like take all the leather, all the pottery, all that stuff, and just keep turning those in and getting the little the point tokens off of those, because the way it is the point tokens are stacks. So when you pull the first one, that's going to be worth more points than the one that's underneath it. But if you keep pulling all those, you're racking up points. However, like the rubies, the gold, and the silver are the ones that have the higher price points. But also, if you turn in a set number of cards, like 4 or 5, you get to take extra tokens that are bonus points. Whoever has the most camels at the end of the game gets bonus points. So I think the way this works, it's a nice little point salad card game set collection, and probably one of my favorite two-player games. And the thing is, it's so quick. And what happens every time someone plays Jaipur for the first time, they're like, let's do that again. And let's do that again. And then what turned out to be like a 5-10 minute game turns into a 30-45 minute session, because they just keep playing and playing and playing. And that's a sign of a good game.
Yeah, it is a very good sign. And the fact that, like, I love the choices that are in it, which is why it's one of my favorite card games of all time, is the fact that each of the resources decrease in value as you buy them. So, and you don't directly interact with the opponent, but everything you do changes how they play, and it makes you feel smart in a really great way. And what I mean by that is that, like, if I see you taking silk, which are the purple cards, and I have one in my hand, well, I may not get a bonus for selling out of the set, but that first token is 5 points. I might just sell it just to keep you from getting that. And then so the next ones you get are only worth 3 points. That's cool, but then at the same time, you don't want to ignore the ones that are lesser value, like leather, because if you get 5 of those, that's up to 10 bonus points on top of it.
Yeah.
It's huge. And so this whole timing back and forth, whether you're selling cards or taking ones from the market or trading them,
or being
it's
smart and collecting camels at the right time. If there's like 3 camels
Mhm.
in the thing, maybe I want to take those. Yeah, it's going to fill 3 new spots. But now, next time around, I can wipe let's say all 5 of my camels
Yep.
here. I could take all 5 of those camels and get all those freaking cards that I want.
I felt bad. I played this last Sunday online with my brother, and he started ranting about how rage-inducing this game was, and that's because I've gotten so good at playing with it. Because he was the one who used to play it with me, and I got so good at playing it that I can just completely everything he does. I know the right counter move to do, and he gets rather frustrated playing it. It's quite amusing.
Well, that's just you in general. You're rage-inducing when people play against you. I won't play Carcassonne ever again with you.
I don't see why not.
Because you're a jerk!
Oh, I'm not. Just because I landed up in your town.
3 times we've played against you. You've always targeted me. So,
I targeted everybody equally.
you've targeted Dom once that entire game. Every time we played against your wife and my wife, you've always targeted me. You avoided the wives.
No. What me and my wife playing is some of the most vicious Carcassonne you're ever gonna see. But we're not talking about Carcassonne.
We're playing.
We're talking Jaipur.
I'm saying you're vicious. That's why nobody wants to play games with you,
So,
especially ones that you're very familiar with.
yes, yeah, I don't blame him. Dead Man's Draw. Let's talk about that real quick. It's a push your luck game and probably one of my favorite from Mayday Games. It was based off of an app that they originally made. What happens in the game, there is 10 different suits of cards. They're numbered 2 through 7, with some exceptions. I'll explain in a minute. On your turn, you flip over the top card of the deck, and you can choose to keep going like any other push your luck game, or choose to stop and take all the cards that are on there. At the end of the game, you're going to take the highest valued card that you have of each of the 10 suits, and that's your score. You add those together. So if I have 7s of all 10, then I have 70 points. However, as you're pushing your luck, if you ever get a card that matches one of the cards that already has come out, so let's say I pull up a Kraken and then I pull up a second Kraken, that will cause me to bust if I have 2 of the same suit.
You're a Kraken.
And so each of the 10 suits also does have its own ability. So like, let's say I flip over a cannon. If I flip over a cannon, I get to blow up the top card of anybody's suit stack. If I flip over a sword, I get to steal somebody's card. If I pull up an arrow, I'm sorry, what's it called? The anchor. If I pull up an anchor, if I bust, every card before it is safe, and I still get to take those. It's a really phenomenal game. It does play really well. I'm not going to belabor the point too much. I really adore the game, but I do agree with you that Jaipur needs to go on. It is just a better game.
Jaipur is a much better game. And if we go down to the breakdown, other than the ease of play, I think Dead Man's Draw is a lot easier to play as a push your luck aspect. The production value in Jaipur alone makes it better. Both versions. The GameWorks version and the Space Cowboy versions are both really well done.
Yeah, and I'm going to give a shout out to the first edition of it. It has one of the best inserts that I've ever seen. And the reason I'm giving it a shout out now is because it's not one of my list on our inserts episode coming up soon.
Next Wednesday.
All right, so Jaipur moves on, quarterfinals.
Yep.
The next one is going to be Lewis and Clark and Rise of Augustus.
I know which one I want to win on this one, honestly. I'll argue whichever one. I'll let you take choice on this one because I took Jaipur on the last one.
How well do you remember Rise of Augustus?
I remember the main mechanism of it.
Okay. I probably remember it better then. So why don't you take Lewis and Clark, and I will argue for Rise of Augustus after.
All right, sounds good. Lewis and Clark. I'm arguing Lewis and Clark. Lewis and Clark is probably tabletop bellhop says it right. Roman bingo.
Yes, exactly.
So, Lewis and Clark is probably. Hold on before we get going here. Tabletop Bellhop, if this is the guy I think it is, thank you for your Twitter account because I use it a lot to find sales.
Okay.
So, Lewis and Clark is probably one of the biggest surprises I have ever played in the last year or so, because I think we played it earlier this year.
Yep. Right before the lockdowns.
Yeah, right before the lockdowns. And yeah, 'cause
you rock, Tabletop Bellhop. Thank you.
And so it is an interesting take on a racing game because the way you have to race is just so incredible that I dig this game. I want to buy myself a copy of it. That's how much I like it.
Yep.
The using of the resources, using your, I'm going to call them Native Americans. I know what they're called in the game, and I don't like the term, but...
Right. Well, so, okay.
There's a reason behind it.
Let's pause for a minute real quick, because I think that's worth noting, and I think that's really interesting, because they call them Indians in the game, and that's because that's historically accurate, and they actually have a whole passage in the game talking about why they're using that term, and why historically they decided to go with that, and the whole history behind it. That's phenomenal. The fact
I don't
that they
disagree
did
with
that.
it. I refuse to use the term because at one point I did have a relationship with a Native American, so I understand why they don't like the reference of that term.
Sure.
So I just something I got into a habit of saying.
Yeah. That's totally fair. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, but other than that, the game just plays well because you're trying to use your resources smartly. You don't want to have them on your ship after a certain point when you have to make camp because you're going to move back spaces. And you're pushing out as far as you can. You want to get out there, and you got to use these cards and these special abilities in a certain way. And I like the mechanism where you got to use one card and burn a card, basically, to use its ability, or two, or three, depending on how many times you want to take that action or have that resources to take that action. And so I dig it. And you could also use your Native American to help you use that, but then you lose that Native American to go onto the actual tribe board, and it's probably one of my favorite games I played within the last year.
That makes sense. Cool.
And the artwork is just gorgeous in this game.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it utilizes the board. What Vincent Dutrait did is he made basically the whole United States, and he has it like in this kind of shrunken down, like generic look, but like the whole Southwest is the Native American area. The whole Mississippi River is this massive river that we're going across. You know, like it's really neat how he was able to pull that off.
And then I do have to mention that for when it goes to game immersions with Lewis and Clark, we played this when lockdown started online on Board Game Arena. Against our friend Dom that we mentioned a lot. And we should have him on the podcast one of these days.
We should. Yeah, if he'd be up for it.
Yeah. But the thing we like about it is that we played with Dom. He went backwards. He was back in New Orleans because he forgot something.
He went all the way to the very last spot.
And then roared all the way back and ended up winning the game. We were just sitting there like, what the heck happened?
With that and Western Legends, that's kind of an ongoing theme with him. Is he...
Yeah, he starts slow. But see, he didn't go backwards in Western Legends. He basically built his engine up.
Because you can't go backwards in that game. If you could, he'd find a way.
He literally went backwards. He's like, I'm going to go ahead and do this way I can get all this stuff. I will take the penalty. Right. And then next thing you know, he's just like, hi guys, and it catches up to us. Yeah. You and me were in the first mountain area when he caught up to us.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's incredible. All right, Rise of Augustus. Let's talk about Roman bingo, as Tabletop Bellhop said it perfectly.
Yeah, that's what I remember. It's bingo. Yeah. That's all it is.
It was the first game that they took the bingo mechanism where one person draws a card or a token, and everybody places it based on that token. I want to talk about this because each of the cards that you're filling out, it really does a great job of bringing out Vincent Dutrait's art. But there is one mechanism in the game. Yeah, it's so good for a game that it's basically, yeah, exactly. It's a really fantastic game. I understand why it's ranked as high. But there is one part of the game that I think sets it apart from others. So I'm going to compare it to Ecos a little bit. because Ecos is a new game from John DeClaire, which I actually like quite a bit, but it uses that same you pull a token, announce it to everybody until a certain point where it gets passed to it. Here's the one thing that I love about Rise of Augustus, and I call this the milestone mechanism. And it has a number of tokens that are just laid out on the board where once you hit a certain milestone, you can choose to score that token. And they're worth a lot of points, and they get even higher. But then and only then is the time when you can score it. What I mean by that is, like, I remember one of the fields are wheat, right? Yeah. So let's say you get 3 wheat. Well, then you can get that token that says, oh, well, I've reached 3 wheat tokens, or 3 wheat cards. I can take it right now and score the points. But the 4 is worth a lot more. But if I ever go to the 4 and I choose not to take it now, I can never take that card again. And I can only take one of them. So it's, in a weird way, a push your luck thing. Tabletop Bellhop says... it just jumped away from me.
I got it right here. It's good for a game that basically using the bingo mechanic. My complaint of that is it seems they cut something from the game, or there was supposed to be an expansion. There's just much more, there's so much more artwork and things on the cards that aren't used. Yep. Like there should become a set collection or goals for different types of cards or goods.
Yeah.
And he also needs more coffee. That's actually what I'm drinking right now.
Cheers. As aren't I. But no, I don't disagree with that. I do feel like it seemed like it was released as a simple version and had more that they had planned to build onto it, and unfortunately, that doesn't quite cut it in my opinion. I really do like Rise of Augustus. I still own it. It is right over there.
Okay, quick question: when you get a bingo, what are you supposed to shout?
Ave Caesar.
Yeah, except for that's wrong.
Okay.
In Latin, the V is a W, kind of like in Ue. Ave Caesar is how it's supposed to be pronounced in actual Latin.
Oh, okay. Sure. All right. Yeah, that's fine.
History major.
No kidding. But no, I agree. Lewis and Clark is just a better enriching game. That race game that's in it, it's just it. Yeah. As Tabletop Bellhop says, I want that full game. I do agree with him.
I agree with
Rise of Augustus wasn't a full game.
Wasn't it though like a Spiel des Jahres nomination?
It was.
That's what I thought. For its time, don't get me wrong, it's a fun game. I enjoyed playing it, but my wife hates
You said it right
game.
there. You said it right there. The game feels dated. You said for its time, that's an exact, like Lewis and Clark. If I bust that out right now, it feels like a modern game, no matter what.
What I like about it is it's great at 6 players and great for new gamers. That's correct. It's great.
That's true.
Except for my wife hates this game, so I'll never own it.
Would you
when we played it at the shop, she was bored like halfway through. She's like, I'm done with this.
Right. She probably wouldn't like to play either Tiny Towns or Ecos either.
I think she would like Tiny Towns more because of the puzzle aspect of it. When you're trying to build, and you're trying to build in the right spots. Ecos, I can't make reference to. I think Ecos is just too easy in a way as, say, Rise of Augustus is.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
And Tabletop Bellhop says he keeps it in public play events where I don't know who will show up, game night, coffee shops, and et cetera, and stuff like that.
It's a gateway. It's a perfect gateway.
Yeah, it's a perfectly good gateway, especially when you're trying to get like people who aren't in it. And we're not knocking it. I enjoyed the game. It was fun for what it was, but I understand why. I truly believe Lewis Clark should go on because I think it's the better game.
I wonder where my copy is now. No, I'm just... Do I still...
You sold it.
Maybe I did. I don't think I did, but maybe I did. Huh. Now I gotta break my brain looking for it. I'll do that later. So I do agree. Lewis and Clark moves on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, multi-award winning. Yeah.
But look at the dates: 2015, 2014, 2013. In today's modern gaming, I don't think it would get that kind of traction.
Well, the thing is, I think Lewis and Clark is that old as well, and that still holds its own. Although I feel like more people have played Augustus. Probably just because of the simplicity
the thing is,
of it.
When you're looking at like the Spiel des Jahres, the Golden Geek, and stuff like that, when you have simple games that play really well, like The Crew coming out, I think it's going to be hard for Rise of Augustus to hold its own in
Sure.
this day and age.
Yeah, I do agree. So we agree then. Lewis and
Yeah.
Clark moves on.
Yep.
Next round.
So our next round is number
About the
3
same year.
seed Lost Cities versus Discoveries Lewis and Clark.
Okay, so now I know which one I want to go on, and I have a hard.
I know which one you're
argument
gonna
for it.
push for to go on, and I know which one I would be comfortable saying because I've only played the other one once.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and take Discoveries Lewis and Clark.
Okay.
But I know which one you want.
Yeah, and that's Lost Cities.
And I don't disagree with you. And honestly, I think it should move on before we even make the argument. But I'm gonna go ahead and try for Discoveries.
Yeah, let's try. Yeah, and the thing is, like, so we can in a way compare the games Lewis and Clark and Discoveries because they're similar game, they're the same designers, but the thing is, Discoveries is just not as good as Lewis and Clark because the randomized dice roll. It's just not. It's a good game. It's really fun. It's
and here's
not as
my
good.
knock for Discoveries, and this is the big thing. As much as the dice mechanic is fun,
Yes.
it loses the strategy that Lewis and Clark, the
Yep.
board game itself, gives you because when it comes down to it, you're beholden to what the dice allow you to do.
And what the cards have on them.
Yeah,
like,
and
in
so
which
the
order you have to
strategy
do it.
itself is just not there like it is in Lewis and Clark.
Yeah.
We've played both of this, and it's funny because a lot of people would say Discovery's Lewis and Clark is a killer for regular Lewis and Clark for them because, it plays quicker.
Yeah.
That's all I can give it. But for me, as much as I like it, it doesn't hold up. We literally played these almost back to back. One week we played Lewis and Clark, and then the next week we played the dice one, and I was just like, what happened to the management, the fun? I love dice games, but when you put this theme on compared to after what we had already played, it kind of lost something for me.
Yeah. And
Tabletop Bellhop adds, Lost Cities is one of the best two-player games ever made, and I do not disagree.
I'm going to talk about Lost Cities because I really do agree. It's I mean, I'm glad it's not going up against Jaipur right now because that would be a really hard argument for me.
And if it moves on, it will not go up against Jaipur.
Yeah, it won't. So Lost Cities is a 2-player only card game. The idea is simple. Each of the 5 suits of cards is a different expedition that you're going to be going on. There's 12 cards of each of the suits. There's the numbers 2 through 10, each with 1 copy, and there are 3 handshake cards. When you go on any expedition, you have to make the deal to try and discover as much as you can. The farther you go on that expedition, the more points it's worth. Meaning, when you're playing cards on your side of the board, that means that you've announced, I'm going on this expedition. You will score points based on the number that's on the cards.
Yeah.
In a way. We'll talk about that in a minute. But any future cards you play on that expedition must be higher than the previous played card. So if I play a 2, I have to play a 3 or combined. Yes. Not to be compared with Lost Cities Rivals, which, I mean, I still have it. I didn't mind it. It's a good auction game. It's definitely not the same, though.
Lost Cities, the board game, was actually better than Rivals, apparently, from what I've heard.
Yeah. Rivals is a very different game. It's an auction game. It's totally different. But the idea that you have to play the cards in order makes a lot of sense thematically, actually, because you're delving into this expedition. The farther you go, the more you're going to find. But every expedition comes at a cost, because any expedition that you start with has a minimum amount of points that are taken away from it. So at every expedition that you put cards on will be minus 20 points before any multipliers. So if I put down only a 9, a 7, and a 7, 9, and 10, well, that's 26 points. I technically only have 6 points for that because it's minus the 20. Whereas if you don't play cards, it's not minus anything because you didn't go on the expedition. You didn't have to have that financial backing to do it. The handshake cards, though, have to be played before the expeditions, and they are effectively multipliers. But you have to cut deals in order to do it, and in order to cut deals with the people who are multiplying these points for you, it has to be made before the expedition, and you can't discuss it before it. It's remarkably thematic, considering it's an abstracted game.
Well, not just that; it's a Kinetia game. Kinetia, he's the king
Yeah.
of painted on theme.
Yeah, he really is. And in a way, like that, I can't help but think this theme is super painted on, but then at the same time, it works really well. I can't think of much way to do it.
I really do enjoy this, and I think it should move on. And here's a point we made against Rise of Augustus to this one. Lost Cities came out in 1999 originally. It still holds its own today.
Absolutely, 100%. Whereas Discoveries, I don't hear many people talking about it.
Not really, unless they're comparing it to a Lois and Clark game. Honestly, I have to say, for me, when it comes down to it, even going through our breakdown.
How many different ways can you see math? Yeah, math. Thank you. Yes.
Yes. So I have to say, I have to give it to Lost Cities. As much as I do enjoy Discoveries, even though I was attacking it, Lost Cities just needs to move on. It's the much better game.
No, you know what does it for me for Lost Discoveries, why I don't like it as much, and that is the expedition that you go on. You have to go from the bottom of the card up, and you have to follow the path, and there's extra stuff that's just not utilized, and you can't reutilize it elsewhere. I get it. Yeah. It makes sense. It makes the mechanisms good, but it's just that takes me out of the game, in my opinion.
All right, so tabletop bellhop for you. I know you missed it earlier. The way we do our top 8 debate breakdown is we come up with a theme. Like for us right now, it's the top 8 Vincent Dutrait art in games. Mm-hmm. And then we go to Board Game Geek and get the top 8 games that both of us have played. This way we can make sound, solid arguments for each game. Yeah. That's how we've broken this down. How many episodes now?
I don't know. This is probably about episode 10 of our debates. Yeah.
15 or so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, okay. So this one is based on the artist, yes. We've done top 8 AEG games. We've done top 8 crowdfunded games and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then so we don't post a bracket necessarily, but we are debating it in bracket format.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks. So let's go on to round 4 and our final one of the quarterfinals, and that is...
hold on really quick. I gotta keep my brackets clean here.
Sure. Lost Cities.
Also, just to let everybody else know too, when we move on to the second round, we reseed. This way, the number 1 seed always faces the lower seed.
Hey, that's the best form of flattery, right? No. I mean, you can tell us we played quite a bit. I can't even show you that wall. Wall on the opposite side of my room.
That what behind him is only 2 of his 12 shelves in his room.
I have, you can see 4 shelves next to me with like pieces of others. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, about 50 shelves. And you see 4 of them. Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, and so for people in the chat and also on YouTube and stuff like that, Tabletop Bellhop on Twitter, he puts out like game deals like on Amazon and stuff like that. I will go ahead, if you want, you can go ahead and put your Twitter account into our chat right now.
Yeah.
If you would like to.
And then we just created a Twitter, so make sure you follow us, and Daniel on our Twitter, go follow Tabletop Bellhop.
Oh, I will.
Yeah.
I follow him on my personal account, so.
Yeah. I just haven't used Twitter in years. I used to use it a lot, though.
Yeah.
All right. Round number 4, we have Pathfinder the Adventure card game. Awesome. Pathfinder the Adventure card game versus Broom Service. 2 incredibly different games.
Very different.
Wow. I know which one.
Tabletop Deals is the one I use a lot. I do know Tabletop Bellhop as well as you have Geek Deals as well, if I remember correctly, and RPG Deals as well.
That's so cool. Have you played? You've played Pathfinder the Adventure card game.
I used to own it. I'm not gonna lie. The one that ruined Pathfinder the card game for me is sitting on my shelf right over there. You can see the little peak of it.
Gloomhaven?
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's how I feel my kid. Nice. Good man.
Good, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So, but I'll do Pathfinder the Adventure card game if you want me to. I can argue a pretty strong point for it. Because I've played probably about 30 or 40 times. it really was one of my most played games at one point. And that's because, it's a really solid system. It's based off of the Pathfinder role-playing system, and you create this, or you have this system where you have a number of locations set up, and there's certain items that you may or may not find in them. The setup is kind of a bore, I will admit, but once you get the hang of it, and you have all the players setting up the same way, you get it pretty quick. But basically you have these different decks that represent the different locations. You will then choose to go to one of the locations. It might be the same as one player, it might not be, but it can be if you're trying to help each other. That tends to be a quick way to go through the deck. And you're basically trying to find the big bad guy in each of those. What's great about it is that when you find him the first time and you fight him, he's going to immediately lock down that deck and jump to one of the others. So basically you have to corner him and defeat him another time. He's not overly difficult to do it, but what makes it really good cool. What makes it really neat is the fact that when you actually when you corner him and defeat him, you're able to win the round, but sometimes you might purposefully wait to do that. And that's because as you're exploring these locations, you'll find cool items, you'll find other neat things that you have the chance to acquire and add to your deck permanently, which is awesome. You can take those cards into the next rounds, into the next games, and many times later on. I really enjoy that system, and I still haven't seen many other games that let you actually explore. I might find a cool sword that my character can use really well, and I get it permanently added into my deck. I haven't seen anything that does it. We moved on to Dragonfire, and if it did that, it would have been phenomenal, but I ended up getting rid of Dragonfire because I was so used to that thing that Pathfinder had.
Yeah, it's not really a deck builder like Dragonfire was, but it never allowed you to keep anything that could help you go along. And to me, that basically takes the RPG aspect out of it.
With
so
the
if I find
exception
a sword,
of,
why am I going to put it away? Why not use it?
Right, exactly. With a couple exceptions, you get XP and you get magical items, but they're so minuscule in comparison. Like, it's not the same as crafting, like finding a sword and like, oh, I'm keeping the sword. You better believe it. I defeated this guy, I get this thing. This is awesome. Like, that's how it would happen. And so that I still think it's a better game than Dragonfire, even though I enjoyed Dragonfire a lot as well.
I did enjoy Dragonfire, but what is it? The new core set is on my review pile, waiting for the pandemic to end so we can play it with at least 3 players.
That makes sense.
And understandable, yeah.
Yep.
I have a lot of games that I've been buying that I haven't been able to play. Yeah. Luckily, we finally decided to break down because we needed to get some gaming in, and we played last Saturday. Oh my god, 12 hours, 8 games later, we had a blast.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what got some of our games on our list now.
Yes.
So, Pathfinder Adventure card game, I like Broom Service a lot. Don't get me wrong, I really do. But there's something about the Pathfinder Adventure card game that was just... I love the fact that you can carry this stuff over to the next game. That's what it needed. I just wish it wasn't dice driven, where Dragonfire was deck builder driven. Once they make that game that... And it makes sense to have Pathfinder be polyhedral dice. It's just because that's the original one. Yeah. So being able to utilize that and knowing which dice you can roll and dump them on the table... It's like, I get a plus D1 or D4 of damage. I love this. It's plus this bonus. It was a solid game. I actually kind of regret getting rid of it, but I do realistically know I probably wouldn't play it anymore.
Yeah, I did enjoy it while we had it. It was one of the first RPG style games that we got. We got this one in the Dungeons and Dragons. Was it Castle Ravenloft? I think is what it was. Mm-hmm. The board game itself. And then we enjoyed it. We had fun with both of those. I think we liked the Pathfinder card game a little bit more. But the issue with it, why we never completed the scenarios, because we had all the scenarios for the Rise of Rune Lords expansion, I think is what it was? Or the Rise of Rune Lords set. is that it got too samey. It just felt too much of the same. You go this, you dig through the pile, so you find what you need. You beat up the big baddie once he goes into one of the leftover piles. It got too samey for us.
Yeah.
At least with stuff like Gloomhaven, or I haven't played it, but Descent, I heard things change up as you play through different scenarios.
Yeah. That's ultimately why I ended up getting rid of it, is because it's every time you played it, you're just playing the same game with a technically different part about that.
Is the robot? Wow. Yeah, it's like a manual. Yeah, it goes along my lines for like, what is it? Fantasy Flight games themselves. It's a chore to learn these style of games just because there's so much going on. And so, case in point, the game that replaced it, Gloomhaven, their newest thing that came out teaches you the game as you play, and I think more games need to implement that kind of rule set where they teach you like, okay, concentrate on this, then the next set we'll concentrate on this until after like 5 scenarios or so you know how to play the game.
Yeah.
And that's what I think of, especially the Pathfinder Adventure card game needs.
Yeah.
And so getting back onto debate here, Broom Service is an award-winning game. It's been honored and awarded a lot. It won the 2015 Kinderspiel. That's impressive in my mind. So the way this game plays, and I had to go on the BGG to re-reference this, is the game is played over 7 rounds with 4 turns per round. Yeah. So what happens is you're going to pick 4 cards to determine what you're going to play as roll-wise. 4 out of the 10 cards in your hand. I am a cowardly mountain witch.
That's right, because you have to play either the cowardly or the brave action. And if you take the brave action, it's better, but you have to stop.
Yeah. Whereas if you take the cowardly, it just kind of is safer, but it doesn't give you as best rewards. And so you're trying to bluff the other players that you're playing against. It's a really neat game. It's a bluffing game that I like, the pick up and deliver aspect that I like. There's a reason why I won a Kinderspiel, and it's a re-implementation, I did not know this, of another game called Witch's Brew.
Uh-huh.
And so, but they added more to it, like the witches, the druids, and the gatherers, and stuff like that. The art in it is beautiful. I love the mechanic is very cool, but the rest is meant to tabletop bellhop, and I can't disagree with him on that one. I played it once. I had to re-implement myself on it, but honestly, for me, I would pick Pathfinder over witches.
Mine would be the same. And it's just Broom Service is so good. It has a lot of that mechanism is absolutely amazing. But the fact is, Pathfinder, first off, it's in a way it's more likely to get to the table because if people are familiar with the Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons style,
generic fantasy in general.
Yeah. Whereas like the production, way more cards, a lot of things that you have to do, and the replay value and immersion is just it's really there. Whereas the meaningful choices would definitely go to Broom Service. Everything else is pretty much it's Pathfinder, the adventure card game. It really would. So which means Pathfinder. What an odd result. So Pathfinder, the adventure card game, will be going next round against Jaipur. I never thought I would say that.
Before we go to the break, let's break down the votes here, because this is going to be interesting for the ones that have been eliminated.
Yeah.
So the ones eliminated are Rise of Augustus.
Mm-hmm.
Rise of Augustus had 1 vote.
Yep.
The next one that was eliminated, of course, is Discoveries, Lewis and Clark. 0 votes.
Oh, bummer.
Next one was Broom Service. That was our leading vote getter at 4.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. So that one's gone. And Dead Man's Draw is our last one. Dead Man's Draw, 1 vote.
Well,
like I said, this one did not get a lot of votes.
Yeah, which was
compared
strange.
to our last top 8 debate with the animals. So yes, we put a poll on the Board Game Revolution Facebook post. This way, fan votes. This way, we can get like a tiebreaker mechanism. We just keep it there to keep it simple for us. But yeah, that's where we place it.
Yeah. So we got 1 vote. So that means that Jaipur next round will be going against Pathfinder, the adventure card game.
Yep. And number 2 seed Lewis and Clark versus the 3 seed Lost Cities.
There we go. So really, our top 4 just went on. No surprises there. Let's see what happens on the next round. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back for our semifinals.